A message from former Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld.
The National Wrestling Hall of Fame is to be commended for recognizing the link between the sport of wrestling and the U.S. Armed Forces. Many of America's most accomplished wrestlers have also served in the U.S. military. I'm delighted that the National Wrestling Hall of Fame is honoring those distinguished individuals who have contributed both to this increasingly important sport of wrestling and also to their country as members of the U.S. Armed Forces. Among those wrestlers who have also served our nation are U.S. Navy Admiral Daniel Gallery, a Naval Academy and Olympic wrestler who later went on to lead the crew that successfully captured a German submarine during World War II. And Lieutenant Colonel Dale Sullivan, an all-Army wrestling team member who flew hundreds of missions over Vietnam as a U.S. Army helicopter pilot. And Jay Robinson, today a highly successful wrestling coach who once proudly wore our country's uniform both at the 1972 Olympic Games and as an airborne Army Ranger. In its new display in Stillwater, Oklahoma, the National Wrestling Hall of Fame will tell these stories and the stories of many more who have shown both perseverance on the wrestling mat and courage in their service to our nation.
My name is Ed Core, former U.S. Ambassador to 3 countries, former Assistant Secretary of State, and along with my twin brother Bert, a former 3-time All-Marine wrestling team member. Secretary Rumsfeld has graciously lent his support to this ambitious project, and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame is most appreciative. His military tie is well known, but he knows of the bond and relationship that exists between wrestling and the military because Secretary Rumsfeld himself was a wrestler. He was captain of his Illinois State Championship high school team. He was a 3-year letterman and senior captain at Princeton. And he was an all-Navy wrestling champion in 1954. When Secretary Rumsfeld speaks of Admiral Gallery climbing into a submarine the Germans are in the process of sinking, he fully appreciates the courage required to do so in the open sea was fine-tuned in the wrestling room. He knows where Lieutenant Colonel Sullivan developed his focused determination to fly directly into enemy fire in support of U.S. and Republic of Vietnam forces. He understands how University of Minnesota wrestling icon Jay Robinson could become the honor graduate of his Army Ranger class. Secretary Rumsfeld knows at the core level these decorated military men carried with them lessons learned from the sport of wrestling, those being dedication, perseverance, accomplish your mission first attitudes. Wrestling and the military have a special relationship that goes back thousands of years, back to the time of hand-to-hand combat. Moves developed in early warfare are still seen on the mat today. Those who have lived this relationship, who have served their country and also competed at a high level of wrestling, are going to be recognized for their contributions at the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. Like those mentioned by Secretary Rumsfeld, Hall of Fame researchers have found some fascinating stories that are being developed for the permanent display at the museum at Stillwater, Oklahoma. Following are a few I think you'll enjoy. Knowing the sacrifices these individuals gave to their country, you'll appreciate the fact that they learned some of the discipline of doing so in the wrestling room.
Douglas M. Blueball was a wrestler of the highest distinction. He grew up on a farm just outside of Ponca City, Oklahoma. He fell in love with the sport of wrestling as a young boy in junior high and found success in high school, winning the state championship his senior year. He was so overpowering that during the tournament, they named him the 1953 Outstanding Wrestler of the tournament. Blueball continued his wrestling career at Oklahoma State University, becoming an NCAA wrestling champion and a 3-time All-American. He was also the outstanding wrestler at the 1957 National AAU Tournament and finished 3rd that year for the Sullivan Award, presented annually to the outstanding amateur athletes in America. Upon graduation from college, Doug joined the United States Army and became airborne qualified. He served from 1957 to 1960, attaining the rank of Specialist, 4th class. Blue Ball also wrestled in the military, becoming a 3-time All-Army wrestler and a Pan-American champion. In 1960, he represented the United States in the Olympics at Rome, winning the gold medal and was named the Outstanding Wrestler. Before completing his military career, this talented world-class wrestler shared his skills and wrestling knowledge as an assistant coach at the West Point Military Academy.
I love the sport of wrestling just as I love my country. It was a great honor to serve in the United States Army and a true thrill to coach at West Point. The 3 years I spent in the Army were 3 of the best years of my life. Wrestling opened so many doors for me and gave me opportunities I never thought imaginable while I was rolling around the mat in Ponca City. And to this day, some of my closest friends are ones I met because of wrestling.
Dan Allen Danny Hodge was another great wrestler from the state of Oklahoma and grew up just down the road from Blue Ball in the town of Perry, Oklahoma. Hodge showed promise from an early age and developed into a leader of one of the true powerhouses of high school wrestling. As a Perry Maroon, Hodge methodically honed his skills in junior high and high school, taking second in state as a junior and winning the state championship in 1951. After graduating from high school, Hodge joined the Navy. He hadn't been in the service a year when he shocked the wrestling world by making the U.S. Olympic wrestling team at the age of 18 and finishing 4th in the world at the Olympics at Helsinki, Finland. 4 years later, he would again wrestle in the Olympics, and this time bring home a silver medal in the Melbourne, Australia Games. Hodge served in the Navy until 1953, then returned home and enrolled at the University of Oklahoma. There he won 3 NCAA wrestling championship titles and was recognized as the outstanding wrestler at the 1957 tournament. An amazing statistic that dramatizes his talent. He was undefeated in college, and in his 46 collegiate wrestling matches, he won 36 of them by pins.
I found the discipline demanded in the Navy was applicable to the discipline required to be a successful wrestler. And the Navy allowed me to embrace my love for wrestling as I was able to compete in the AAU events and 2-time Olympian. Representing the United States was a tremendous honor and a valuable experience that improved my skills and laid the foundation for my success at the University of Oklahoma and throughout the rest of my life.
Howard R. George was born at Watertown, New York in 1935. A natural athlete in high school, George participated in all sports and excelled in most. He went from high school directly to the United States Marine Corps, where he served with distinction for 20 years. He participated in multiple athletic teams while in the Marines, including wrestling, judo, and football, eventually becoming a coach in each. During his military career, he served 1 tour in Korea and 2 tours in Vietnam, earning numerous awards and medals, including the Combat Action Ribbon, the Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal, and a Purple Heart. George continued his love for wrestling during his Marine days, earning a place on the All-Marine wrestling team each year from 1955 to 1960. His talents were so extraordinary, he was asked to coach at the United States Naval Academy from 1960 to 1964. He also represented the United States in international competition as a member of the 1956 Olympic team at Melbourne, Australia, and the 1960 Olympic team at Rome, where he placed 7th. George could have been the model for the Marine poster because of his physique, shaped in part from his dedication to training and exercise. He could have been known for his world elite status as a wrestler, but he preferred to just be known as First Sergeant Howie George, Marine. Joe Henson says he was a late bloomer as a wrestler, but you wouldn't know it by his success. He was very, very successful in high school, but blossomed in college. Later in the Olympics, and then later afterwards in administrative leadership positions with the United States Olympic Wrestling Committee and then the National Amateur Athletic Union. Upon graduation from high school, Henson was recruited by his brother, who was a coach at the United States Naval Academy. With the country just coming out of the Great Depression and entering the Second World War, he realized the value of becoming a naval officer. During his 4 years at Annapolis as a midshipman, he was always preparing for battle, either in the classroom or the wrestling room. He clearly was successful at both, captaining the Navy wrestling team his senior year and receiving his commission as a Navy ensign. He soon shipped out to the Pacific and was involved in 3 invasions prior to the dropping of the atomic bombs. He credits the Navy for his success in life, first as a career naval officer, retiring at the rank of captain, and second as a wrestler. He said the Navy allowed him the opportunity to prepare for the Olympic trials, and in the 1952 Games at Helsinki, he won the bronze medal. He later became involved with the Olympic Wrestling Committee, serving as a committee member 16 years, 4 of those as the chairman. After retiring from the Navy, he continued to be involved in wrestling, eventually becoming the president of the National AAU. Joe Henson, as much as any American, served his country in his sport with distinction. R. Wayne Bachman is the consummate athlete and military man. He began his wrestling career in suburban Oklahoma City in the 1950s, placing 3rd in the state tournament his senior year. Wrestling at the University of Oklahoma, Bachman became a 2-time Big 8 champion and was named the tournament's outstanding wrestler in 1963. At the NCAA Wrestling Championships, he made the finals 3 consecutive years and was an NCAA champion his junior year. Upon graduation, Bachman became an officer in the United States Air Force, where he served for 21 years. He continued wrestling in the Air Force, winning the Inter-Service Championship an incredible 16 times. But even more impressive, he was a member of the United States Olympic Wrestling Team 3 times, competing in the Olympic Games at Tokyo in 1964, at Mexico City in 1968, and at Munich in 1972. He also was on the United States World Championship team 8 times and a 2-time Olympic coach. Bachman holds a unique distinction of having won a national championship in the 4 recognized wrestling styles, and they are collegiate, freestyle, Greco-Roman, and Sambo. But Bachman isn't a guy in wrestling just for individual honor. He gave back as a team player to the United States Air Force as few could. For 27 years, he was the head coach of wrestling at the Air Force Academy at Colorado Springs. He was named the Western Athletic Conference Coach of the Year 3 times, and then in 1991, he delivered the first outright Western Athletic Conference Championship for the Air Force Academy in any sport.
I'm Leroy Smith, Executive Director of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame and Museum. What you have just seen is the beginning of what we're creating at the National Wrestling Hall of Fame to pay tribute to our military heroes who share our special bond of wrestling. Wrestlers like Ambassador Ed Corr, Navy Admiral Dan Gallery, Army Lieutenant Colonel Dale Sullivan, Army Captain Jay Robinson, Army Specialist Doug Blubaugh, Navy Seaman Danny Hodge, Marine First Sergeant Howie George, Navy Captain Joe Henson, and Air Force Major Wayne Bachman were all outstanding military men and wrestlers. And certainly former Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, who in addition to being the Princeton University wrestling team captain his senior year, was undefeated 2 of his regular 4 seasons in college and 2nd and 4th place finished in the Eastern Intercollegiate Wrestling Championships. All of these men served our country with honor and distinction and our sport with dedication and spirit. We have highlighted just a few of the men who have contributed so much. There are many, many more, and we are preparing to share their stories with all our visitors through this exhibit. You can help us in the development of this project by sharing our vision with others and by telling us of the worthy wrestlers who have given of themselves in service to our country. We have established a link on our website at the National Wrestling Hall of Fame that will direct you and others to our military information form. By filling it out and getting it to us, we can begin the research to honor those who serve both our country and our sport. I encourage you to visit our site and help us begin this ambitious and most important project. Thank you for your time and thank you for your assistance.